Hello, welcome back to another FPL video. I hope everyone is doing well. We've currently had a couple of games happen in game week 25. It's going meh. It's going okay. It's all right so far. It's all right. The Bamford blank, obviously. But today we're going to be focusing on game week 26, a double game week 26. There's so many games to cover, to sort of talk about. Today I'm going to be looking at essential play or potentially essential players for the double game week 26, and also those players you should avoid. They're stinkers. We're going to be I'm going to be splitting this up into two videos as there are so many teams to cover. There are 14 teams that double, so today I'm going to be looking at 7, and there's a Liverpool, Chelsea, West Brom, Burnley, Fulham, Sheffield and Everton. If you are new around here, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily FPL content. Hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, and let's get straight on into this one. So the first team we come to is Liverpool, and they are having a right old mare at the minute. I'd say, to be honest, a lot of their team are in the avoid category. Right there, we've got Firmino, Marley and Alisson. Alisson pretty much covers, all of the defensive assets, including the likes of Trent, the likes of Robertson. I mean, they're just not performing well enough at the minute, and especially for the price that you pay. I mean, normally Firmino isn't the greatest asset, but now, like with the form that Liverpool are on, they're not scoring goals. They're also conceding a lot of goals, which is sort of not something we really associate with Liverpool, especially at Anfield. They're looking pretty woeful at the minute. So for the prices that you're paying for a lot of these players, yes, they always have the potential to haul. It is Liverpool at the end of the day. They could always come up with the big scores, but I feel like, the likes of Trent, the likes of Robertson, you're just paying too much of a premium for what they're actually offering at the minute. I will say that Liverpool do have a good run of fixtures coming up. They've got a double against Chelsea and Sheffield. Sheffield, obviously, the kind of bottom team in the league right now, so they could easily go and do something there, and we could see some good performances. In terms of solid picks for Liverpool, there's no one for me really kind of in that mid-range bracket. Maybe you could put Kabak in there because he's 5 million. He seems like he's going to start week in, week out now. But that being said, Liverpool aren't really keeping clean sheets, and I think there are a lot more kind of defensive assets around that price bracket from other teams who I would much rather go for. And yeah, as I say, there's no one kind of in that mid-tier price that I particularly like from Liverpool. I mean, you've got Thiago at 6.5, but he doesn't really get any kind of attacking returns. The only player that you could potentially argue, or that definitely is a good player for Liverpool, is the main man, Mo Salah. And is Salah essential? That is the big question. He's the only one from Liverpool who's really still kind of getting some points, although he did blank in the game against Everton. I know a lot of kind of Salah owners weren't particularly happy about. You are paying 12.6 million for an asset who, if he's going to blank, it's really not worth that money. The only reason I'd really be keeping him is if you plan on captaining him. If you plan on captaining him, then I think he is fine to keep. But if you just kind of plan on keeping him around for 12.6 million, I think he holds up way too much value for what he is actually offering. I personally have taken him out of my team as it has allowed me to get the likes of Kane, and I think the likes of Kane instead of Salah, Kane could easily go and outperform Salah, the same with the likes of Son, but these are players we'll kind of come on to. The thing is with Salah though, is he essential? He could still be essential because he is probably one of the only players, along with Bruno Fernandes, who, if he does do well, and I'm talking really well, I'm talking hauling a brace or a hat-trick, which, Salah is probably one of the only Liverpool players who still actually looked good in the past few weeks, who could really damage your rank. Salah's still a very highly owned player, and if you don't own him and he does do well, he could really hurt your rank. But, it's a bold move getting rid of him, but not as brave as you may be thinking, as I think the time for Salah this season may be coming to an end. But, he's still a very good player and could easily go and bag goals. Next, we move on to Chelsea, who have been performing quite well of late. They had a little stumbling block against Southampton, a 1-1 draw, which, is not the worst result in the world. Tuchel really would have wanted to win that game. But in terms of a void from Chelsea, we've got Ben Chilwell, who's seemingly been kind of put to the bench, who may come in for a couple of games, but Alonso seems to have taken the spot. Abraham and Giroud, we don't really know who's going to be starting week in, week out. Most of the attackers, we don't really know who's going to be starting. To be honest, Hudson-Odoi came on for 30 minutes. Tuchel didn't like his attitude, didn't like his kind of intensiveness, so he took him off after 30 minutes. And yeah, between Abraham and Giroud, we really don't know who's going to be starting week in, week out. So it's kind of a void for those guys. In terms of solid pick, I think that the majority of the Chelsea team, or the majority of the Chelsea defence, are solid picks. The way that Chelsea have been defending has been absolutely unreal. On paper, they've got two really hard fixtures. They've got United and Liverpool, but with the way that Liverpool are playing at the minute, you wouldn't necessarily think that's actually too hard hard of a fixture, and they could easily keep a clean sheet. But it is Liverpool, if they turn up on the day, they can score. And United obviously isn't the easiest to fixture either. You've got Alonso in there who bombs so far forward. I mean, the amount of shots and just general kind of expected attacking returns that this guy has in such a short period of time since he's been back is unreal. Could be a really, really good asset going forward. And one thing to mention as well is that after the double game week, Chelsea's assets get they get a good run of fixtures up until about game week 35. So definitely something to consider there. We've got Timo Werner, who could be an okay pick. I still think he's potentially a little bit too expensive just because of the attacking returns he's been getting of late. He's in there, but he's probably on the lower side of kind of players I'd be wanting from the Chelsea assets and in general, but because of the attacking returns he's been getting of late, I kind of had to respect that. Mason Mount is a very interesting one. He scored a penalty. Now, Kante had an unbelievable game, I think, against Southampton. He was kind of hurrying about as he normally does and getting so many interceptions and tackles in there. If he continues to play that midfield of Kante and Kovacic, Mount will be on penalties and therefore could be a really nice asset going forward. Those midfield spots are very precious, but with the fixtures that Chelsea do have, as I said, Mount could be a decent option. Then on the cheaper side, you've got Rudiger coming in at 4.6 million as a defensive asset. He'll just pick you up 6 points a week. Has a small goal threat, but I think he's also a very decent option if you want to get into that Chelsea side at a bit more of a budget. And one more thing to mention is Alonso is a bit of a rotation risk. He may come off. He may in some games come off at the 59th, the dreaded 59th minute. I think he will play most games. It's kind of the balance between the attacking returns and the potential rotation, whereas I think Azpilicueta has pretty much nailed his spot on and does also have some potential. Not as high as Alonso, but he's going to be nailed to play week in, week out. Then we play on to Burnley, who play against Spurs and Leicester. Not the greatest of fixtures for them, and they did actually look really, really shaky in the game against West Brom. They easily could have conceded, and if West Brom had a bit more nous and were able to finish their chances, Burnley definitely would have conceded. In terms of the avoid players, we've got Westwood, we've got McNeil, and we've got Vidra. Basically, most of the attacking assets for Burnley, we know that they're not a very good kind of attacking side. The main kind of appeal for Burnley comes defensively, and that's why, Westwood, McNeil, and Vidra, they all have the chance to do well in any given game week, but their consistency is really, really poor. I'm not even sure if Westwood's picked up an attacking return this season. He might have just picked up an assist. McNeil's got a couple of goals and an assist, and Vidra's got a couple of goals. But other than that, the consistency is not very good at all. There is one attacker, however, that you could potentially lean towards, and that is Jay Rodriguez. As we can see here, most of the Burnley kind of defence I've just put in the solid pick. I would, however, say that Burnley as a team going into this double game week, I'd put kind of very low down on the players that I would want just because of their fixtures against Leicester and Spurs. Very hard fixtures. They look very shaky against West Brom, and Dyche even kind of alluded to the fact that the Burnley players were quite tired and not kind of as fit and ready to go for that game. And with these two games coming in such quick succession of each other, it may not be the best idea to kind of bring in a Burnley asset. I think if you own a Burnley asset, you can be absolutely fine to play them, but I wouldn't necessarily be bringing them in. But that being said, we've seen the return of Charlie Taylor bombing down that left-hand side, and he looks like he could get some kind of attacking return. Being a defender, he's not necessarily a bad one to pick up at 4.4 million. Loughton did score a goal against Crystal Palace, his first goal in however many years, but it shows that the attacking returns are there for the fullbacks. We've got Pope, who seemingly just picks up bonus points and save points for fun, and that is another thing to say. If you've got Pope and they do keep a clean sheet, he's going to get like a 10 or 11 pointer in these games. Benmi and Tarkowski as well, the kind of heart of that Burnley defence. Obviously not bad options. Ones that personally, as I said, I wouldn't be bringing in. But if you own, I think they're absolutely fine to own. But as I said, Burnley are not really a team I'm looking at really targeting for the double game week. However, out of the Burnley team, these are the guys who I kind of think are the solid ones to go for. And yeah, none of their players are particularly essential, I feel. If anything, as I say, they're kind of on the lower side of the players I'd pick. Then we've got West Brom, who play against Brighton and Everton. Everton, a team who've had a little bit of a resurgence in form, and Brighton, a team who look very, very good defensively. So it may not be a good omen for West Brom coming into the double game week. The players to avoid here, I've got Bartley, Callum Robertson and O'Shea. Now with Bartley and O'Shea, it's not that they definitely can't get points, but I think with Ajayi out now he's got that red card, the likelihood of a West Brom clean sheet really does decrease. Not that they've particularly been keeping too many clean sheets, and with O'Shea and Bartley, they're not really likely to get any kind of attacking returns as well. So the max they're going to get is 6 points. And with Ajayi out, I really don't think that West Brom are going to be keeping clean sheets in this game. Then we've got Callum Robertson, who has lost his striker spot to the main man, Diagne. Now, I put Diagne in solid pick because he really does look like a bit of a baller. He had some really good opportunities against Burnley. He had one where he hit the bar. Maybe he could have done better there. But one where he put it on an absolute plate to Matthias Pereira, who, to be fair, I put in solid pick here because he is on penalties. He has been playing well of late, but he really should have been scoring that. But I think, these three guys, maybe Maitland-Niles, because he will provide some kind of attacking potential, although I don't think he's going to get any clean sheets, which is why I've not really put him in the solid pick section. But Diagne does look very good and genuinely like he could score in most games. So I think Diagne is probably the player I'd lean towards the most out of them. I have kind of said I wouldn't go for defensive assets, and Johnson is in there. Johnson is mainly in there because of the save points he picks up, and if they do end up keeping a clean sheet, he's more likely to kind of get a 9 or a 10 pointer because of the save points and bonus points, rather than the likes of Bartley or O'Shea, who just come in at 6 points. Then in terms of essential, I'd just be chatting an absolute breeze if I told you that any of the West Brom lot were essential. There are a couple of good players to pick from there at some decent prices, with Pereira coming up 5.4 and Diagne at 6 mil. But like Burnley, not a team I'd really be looking at to target for the double game week. Then we come to Everton, who I alluded to quickly before. They're on a bit of a resurgence in form, as I said, and with the fixtures they've got in this double game week, playing against Southampton and West Brom, it could be a really, really nice double game week for them. However, firstly, the players to avoid, we've got Sigurdsson, Iwobi and Yerry Mina. Now, Sigurdsson did step up to take the penalty and did put it away against Liverpool. However, that's really the only attacking threat that Sigurdsson does provide. A kind of 6.5 to 7 million. He takes up a very precious midfielder spot when there are other players that I would definitely prefer to have in my team other than Sigurdsson, even from the Everton team. But just to list off a couple of other players, you've got the likes of Maddison, you've got the likes of Barnes, Grealish if he is fit. In terms of Iwobi, he seems to kind of be very much in and out of the side, so definitely one I'd avoid. And Yerry Mina, if he does start, can provide a little bit of attacking potential. However, he's currently injured, so if you really want Yerry Mina, I kind of just hold on and wait for the injury news. However, it does look like he's likely to maybe miss at least one of these games. Keane could be a decent replacement and has scored goals in the past. However, another defensive player who is a solid pick is Luca Dean, who's picked up 6 assists so far this season. And with the likelihood that, against maybe West Brom or even Southampton, that they could keep a clean sheet, I think Dean really does have a potential to haul in this game. James Rodriguez picking up what was an exquisite assist through to Richarlison, who, to be fair, took his chance very, very well. Picking up now 2 goals in 2 games. Richarlison definitely does deserve a mention. However, the main attacking threat and the main attacking asset and the best attacking asset that Everton do have is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Now, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin essential? Now, I definitely think that he deserves to be in a tier above all the other Everton players. He's been so good this season for Everton and in FPL. And one thing to mention on Richarlison as well is that with Calvert-Lewin coming back into the side, Richarlison will probably drift a little bit wide, and both the goals he scored, well, the first one against Manchester City, the ball just cannoned off him, but he probably would have been in a wide position had Calvert-Lewin been on the pitch. And the same with the goal he scored against Liverpool. He was central, so with Calvert-Lewin back, he's probably going to be playing out wide. DCL is really, really good of late. He gets one opportunity and he scored in the reverse fixture against West Brom as well earlier on in the season. It was actually the second day of the season. He scored a hat-trick against them, so he really could be a fixture to target. Now, is he essential? He is still quite highly owned. I think a lot of people were shipping him out for Danny Ings this week, which is, fair enough. So I don't necessarily think that Calvert-Lewin is essential, but he's definitely a very, very good pick for this game week. Next, we move on to Fulham, who've got Crystal Palace and Spurs in the double game week. Now, Crystal Palace have been on really, really poor form of late. They played Brighton on Monday, so it'll be interesting to kind of see whether that poor form continues. If it does, then a Fulham asset could be very, very nice. They do also play Spurs, though, and Spurs, against Kane and Son, which I'd say a fair few of you will maybe own both or even own at least one of them. It may not be best to kind of, have that conflict of players, but the Crystal Palace fixture alone could be one to target. In terms of the avoid, we've gone for Mitrovic, Cavaliero and D. Cordova-Reid. Mostly because these guys, you don't really know who's going to play week in, week out. There's a lot of rotation, and especially with the fact that this main man, the solid pick Madja, has come into the Fulham side. Mitrovic isn't really going to get a sniff in anymore. There are a lot of players who I'd say kind of maybe steer steer clear of. Robinson for Fulham, we've seen a lot of rotation around. Tete seems to have maybe kind of, cemented a bit of a place into the Fulham side. However, I do think he's due some rotation. Loftus-Cheek doesn't really get attacking returns. I will say that Lookman, having scored against Sheffield, is definitely a decent option. There are a lot of good midfielders, but with Fulham having a double game week 26 and also a blank game week 29, it could be, a very good idea to pick one of their players up. Lookman could be an option. Aina has been absolutely balling of late. He picked up an 8-pointer against Sheffield, 9 points in the game before that, and then 11 points in the game before that, totaling 28 points over the past 3 game weeks. That is absolutely unreal. So I think Aina's definitely the one I'd be leaning towards as a Fulham asset. We've also got Areola, who could be a really, really good kind of rotation keeper in goal for 4.5 million with the saves he gets. I mean, some of the saves he makes as well. He is a class goalkeeper. I was very surprised when Fulham actually managed to pick him up, but Areola is a really good option as well. Those are the main kind of 3 I'll be looking at, and Lookman, but other than that, I kind of probably would stay away from Fulham. Not the best double game week, but probably not the worst either. Then in terms of essential, as with West Brom, I'd be chatting if I said that any of these lot were essential. However, Fulham definitely are on a turn of form, so they're definitely better picks than they used to be. Then next, we're going to take a little look at Sheffield United, who play against Liverpool and Aston Villa. And there's only one thing to say for Sheffield United assets, and that is avoid. Don't go near Sheffield United assets. Honestly, they've been looking pretty woeful of late. The only reason you would go for a Sheffield United asset is if you wanted Brewster, a 4.4 million kind of bench fodder option who could come in for maybe 1 point, or someone like Ampadu, who's like a playing, or even Jagielka, a playing kind of 4 mil defender. That's the only reason you would want kind of Sheffield United options as bench fodder. Other than that, just steer clear of them. They've been on woeful form throughout this season. So yeah, Sheffield United assets, let's steer clear of them, please. So I hope you have enjoyed this quick little look ahead to double game week 26. The players who you should, avoid, the solid picks and the essentials for the double game week. If you're new around here, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily FPL content. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.